Well, it's Monday, ladies and gentlemen, but a special Monday because it's the Monday of the week that Kelly and Company wraps up. 5 more shows to go, including today. Stick with us, please. Always great content ahead. Stand by. On today's program, we visit with downtown Dave Brown, and not just to promote his new show, Game Changers, on AMI TV, but let's celebrate the live show era in a special way. And what does it take to be a successful traveler? Orientation and Mobility Specialist Mark Rankin explores the tricks and techniques he's come across over his years working with the blind and low vision community. It's our last week of Kelly and Company, so hang with us for heart-filled reflections.
This is Kelly and Company.
Kelly MacDonald here, and I have to say, hint, 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 to pick up later in the week, heart-filled reflections. That's all I can tell you right now. But hang in this week, because that sounds like a word as much as it means looking back over something. For us, it might be a word we could use, Nisreen, for the future. Welcome back to the show, Nisreen Abdel-Majid. And how are you dealing with the heat wave in Ontario?
But yesterday, we were the only weird family out there that we decided to go to a park with a heat warning, and it was wild. We were forcing ourselves to stay. Even though we were dying. We were like trying to get under the shade. It was still better under the shade, but still it was too much.
Were there people in the park? Were there actually like a lot, or was it quiet?
There were people. I thought we were the only weird family out there that decided to go to a park with a heat warning, but I was so surprised that there were other strange folks out there that thought this was a good idea.
A lot of people like heat.
Not only that, but we decided to have barbecue, so the heat from the grill was even worse.
Not just a family cold picnic with deviled eggs and stuff like that need to be in your ice that you have to eat almost right away because it's just so hot.
On heat. Exactly.
All right. Good for you guys. But, Fedora's off for that move.
Yeah. So, Kelly, the people that aren't feeling the heat wave right now is in the UK. And we're going to talk to somebody from the UK right now. So there are so many endings in life that we often don't get to fully process and leave us feeling lost with no way of expressing so. We explore endings with a psychotherapist, Fern Lulham, fittingly on our last chat together. Fern, how's it going?
Yeah, do you know what? You said that we're not experiencing a heat wave. It's pretty hot here, Nisreen. I know that's surprising from the UK, but maybe we've reached the end of our dreary grey season at last. It's taken long enough.
Low key, I'm glad that we're not the only people feeling this way. So we're in this together. Let's just say that.
We are, indeed. Yeah, well, that makes it better, doesn't it? I mean, I think that's kind of solves all problems in life when you're not alone. And I think you're very, very right about endings. I think they come up so much, and especially in therapy and my work with clients. Of course, some will come to me because they've had an ending. So they might be going through grief or loss, or they might have broken up with somebody, or they might have a health condition that's all of a sudden caused an ending of a different version of themselves. But also, of course, when we have therapy, at some point, it's going to end. You know, it's not going to last forever, unfortunately. I mean, lots of my clients would love to talk to me forever, as you can imagine. But at some point, I'm afraid I have to cut them off. So that's where we come to this conversation, which we don't often get in life, where we can actually talk about what are endings like for you? How do you experience endings? Because as you said, Nisreen, so often we have them and we can all kind of think of lots of endings that we've had, but so often we don't get that opportunity to stop and go, hang on a minute, I'm letting go of something here and maybe something else is starting. So it's nice to just stop and kind of take all of that in and try and process it.
I feel like often as well, people just say, okay, get over it. Let's move past it. Next. People are always in a rush to move on. And yeah, you're right. We don't get a chance to stop and process and think it over and reflect.
Yes, exactly. And I think very often it happens so quickly that before you've kind of realized what is going on and being able to sort of have any time to emotionally adapt to it, it's gone. And there's no way of kind of talking about it or being able to reflect and to look back at the happy stuff. And also I think there's a lot of pressure, as you say, to kind of see the silver lining a lot of times and just go, oh well, don't be sad that it's over, be happy that it happened. And of course there's something in that, but at the same time I think if we never feel that sadness or that loss or maybe even frustration that something's ending, that's not good for us either. I think we need to acknowledge that there's so many different feelings that come along with endings, and they're all valid and they're all okay.
Yeah. And we have to watch what we say to people, because a lot of time it passes off as we're dismissing their strife, their stress that they're going under, or their sadness, whatever it might be. Or we just think, I should have something to say. I don't. So, well, just buck up. You'll feel better. You just give it time. And some of that is accurate, but we are entitled to go through what we do, and no one wants to feel that way for too long. We really want to feel on keel and stuff like that. Fern, what do you think in your experience, and what is the most common change that seems to trouble us more than others? I mean, I think over time you get used to change, whether it's at a workplace and different things happen, or in school, but some things, maybe relationship breakups, maybe you handle death in your world really tough, that change, or something else, health concerns really scare you. What do you feel is the one that people seem to struggle the most with, or come to you the most with?
I think, there are so many different situations like that. I think relationships are a huge one, of course, losing that connection. I also think that, like I say, transitioning into a different phase of life when you've kind of become so used to the person that you are, and then all of a sudden, let's say you lose your sight or you lose your ability to walk or whatever that might look like, that you all of a sudden go, I'm going to have to relearn everything now. And who am I and what's my identity now? I mean, I know that I've spoken on this show a lot about that when I got my guide dog. It was like, oh, hang on a minute, now I'm this other person that everyone knows that I can't see, and kind of adapting to that. And I think one of the hardest things perhaps when it comes to endings is where there is a sense of guilt or shame or kind of an unfinished situation, right? Where you walk away from it and you think, maybe I could have done something to prevent that. Maybe I caused that ending to happen, where there's just a sense of regret and shame, like I say, of could I have done something different that would have meant this ending could have been prevented? And I think those are the ones that really stick with people. And we have to work around, not only did you do something bad, but also a lot of times that translates for people as I am a bad person because of that.
And how can we work on it and process it? What are the different techniques to it?
Well, I think one of them, and it sounds very, very simple, but it is very, very hard to do, is just to sit with those feelings and to kind of acknowledge what you are feeling and why you are feeling that. And something that I'm forever saying to my clients is, how would you approach somebody else in this situation? If a friend came to you and they said, I am in exactly the same situation that you are in, what would you say? And 9 times out of 10, they are a whole lot more compassionate. They're not kind of pointing this finger of blame and saying it's all your fault and, everything would have been great if you hadn't have done X, Y, or Z. They're just saying, wow, this must be really painful for you. And I see that and I understand that. And there was nothing more you could do, or you did your best, and that's all anyone can expect of you. And I think when we can just be with ourselves and support ourselves, that really helps us to kind of say, I'm in this situation, I don't know what the future might hold, I know that I didn't enjoy that, that awkwardness or maybe the upset that ending brought me, but I'm not going to kind of turn it inwards and punish myself for feeling sadness about it.
What about our own self-directed change? We see that there's something in our lives and say, I've got to make a change here, especially those of us in the disabled community, when it may come to employment, circumstances worth living, maybe relationships that we're in, or what have you. When we really feel sometimes a desperation. I think of employment being one of those things. How am I going to get a job? Should I leave this job? That kind of change is so daunting for us.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It is. It's hugely much so. And I think, it's so easy in hindsight to kind of look back and go, oh, I was so scared about doing that, but I'm so glad I did. It's the best thing that I ever did. But I think there is something in saying with every ending, there is a new beginning. And I think sometimes, as much as we talk about the uncomfortable feelings, or, some people would call them the negative feelings that come along with endings, sometimes ending can be a huge relief. Sometimes it can be like, thank goodness that I was strong enough and brave enough to get myself out of that situation. Because I think we're socialized when we grow up to always feel like an ending is a bad thing. And sometimes endings are the strongest thing you can do, right? We're kind of taught like if you end a relationship or if you walk out of a job, well, you've just given up and you're not tough enough or you're not strong enough to carry on. Actually, it takes a lot of bravery to say, this is a situation that I'm comfortable in and I could continue with, but actually I'm not happy and I'm going to make that change. That doesn't come easily. And, anyone who has done it knows that oh so well. And so I think, kudos to you if you come to that position and you're like, I'm going to do it. I'm going to take that leap of faith and make a change.
This is such a positive way of looking at it, because even, when you have a disability and you lose, for example, your vision, that's an ending to talk about. That's a very difficult process to go over and to get, I wouldn't say to get over it, obviously, but a lot of people look at it and they're like, okay, it's time to move on. Forget about, feeling bad or feeling sorry for yourself, and let's just move on and accept it. It's not that easy. It's not that easy. So when you put it the way that you put it right now, it's such a positive mentality. It is a new beginning. It's a different experience, I would say. Yeah. And it's a different way of looking at it. So I love that.
I think you bring up such a good point there. And I think one thing is just giving yourself that time and realizing that, like you said, you may never fully be over this. I have lots of clients that come to me and they're like, does this get better? When do I just get through this and I don't worry about this anymore? Yeah. And lots of times I say to them, there's good news and there's bad news. The bad news is you might never get over this. You might always have these memories or these thoughts or these moments that catch you. Like you use sight loss as an example. And that is, like you say, something that you can be going along and thinking everything's fine and actually I've adapted to my life now and I'm happy as somebody who has sight loss. But then all of a sudden a situation can come along, as we've spoken about so many times in the past, that just makes you think, oh my God, this is really hard and I am still struggling. And I think again, in those moments, we need to just be on our own side and say, I'm not failing because I'm having a wobble here. I'm not, this is not like I'm back to square one because I'm having a bad day. This is just a bad day. And it doesn't mean that all the progress that I've made and all of the good things that I've done along the way are lost because of that. Because I think that is something that very much can come along with endings, that if something ends, then that negates everything that's come up to that point. What was the point in any of it then? But of course, we're growing and we're learning all of the time. So our experiences are so important, even if they do come to an end or even if something changes along the way.
Exactly.
Very good. I mean, some of us are really comfortable with change. Some of us embrace it. But at some point, no matter who you are, it frightens the heck out of you. And you kind of stop and say, what do I do here? And I think, Fern, that is one of the hardest things to know, that look at, man, you've either suffered a loss, a change, something going to be different. And it's going to be different forever. You're always going to reflect, think back, or feel that ouch from it. And that's okay. It's what we do with it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think also the part of that is another thing to focus on, is that you will always have that part of you that you're missing, or that relationship or whatever it is, even this show, we can say. Yep. It's something that we will always be shaped by. We will never forget it. We will always have lessons that we learned and memories that we gained. And in those sad moments, we can also remember the fun and the laughter and the happiness and all the joy that it brought us. And that's where I say, just because it's over, it doesn't mean that all of those beautiful moments along the way and that connection that we had and that friendship that we built means nothing, because of course it doesn't. You know, it will change us as a person and it will carry with us forever into the future. And so, you know, it's never going to be completely gone, because it's, you know, it's kind of become a part of us, really.
I love that. I love that. Thank you so much, Fern.
Yeah, it's a pleasure, always.
Psychotherapist Fern Lulham has been our reliable bestie for almost a decade now. She's played games with us, explored the hard topics, shared deep and vulnerable conversations around coping with disabilities. And we're not only grateful for your expertise, Fern, but we're so proud of the work you're doing personally and professionally. Please, please stay in touch.
Oh, lovely. I definitely will. Thank you so much for everything that you've done. And to be honest, you've been a constant through all my chaos and constantly chaotic. And I've loved every second of it. So thank you.
Good luck, Fern. Thank you. It's a tough time for the show. Fern's segment there said so much in the sense of ending, moving on. One door closes, one opens. There's just so many great things to take from there that I know all of us are kind of exercising in our minds and looking forward to what comes next. And as I mentioned off the top, we'll give you some more details later on in the week about that regarding the team and AMI Audio as things unfold. But always those fine words. And I remember with Fern, we used to, those games you referenced, we used to do a lot of that. And then there was a change in Fern as she started to get into the counseling practice more, the education of, and moving on. I noticed that Fern needed and wanted to speak to people on that level and felt that importance. And we made some adjustment in the segment. And I think some who, hey man, I miss some of those games and things that we did when Fern first was with the show. And again, those are the changes, the directions. And that's what kind of made me ask the self-motivated changes that I kind of was curious of. So again, Fern Lulham joining us for the last time on the show. Of course, you can check that out via the podcast if by chance you missed it. There was a time that AMI's Dave Brown was a co-host on Kelly and Company back when I happened to be a little bit busier of a bee, as a matter of fact. I was working on Blindsided, 3rd season. This is after his time on AMI This Week and before his time on The Pulse. I think I'm right. I've got that, I think, pretty accurate. Dave, welcome to the show.
Hey, Kelly. Hey, Nazreen. The timeline and the history lesson adds up in my mind. How are you supposed to keep track of a thing that are almost a decade old? You know, it's tough stuff.
It's almost impossible. Like, it really is. Everything gets out of order. So you were on AMI TV, but you did come from the world of radio. So were you watching kind of as those shows rolled out, the AMI audio shows, with a little bit of that envy, Dave, since, hey man, this is where my feet are grounded?
Envy is probably the more diplomatic term. How about outright jealousy was the feeling that I had as Live from Studio 5 was popping off and Kelly and Company was getting started. And I was so grateful for those couple of months that Andy Frank thought of me to step into your shoes and hang out in Toronto and get to meet a lot of the folks within the AMI audio family. I always think about those 3 months in 2017 as 3 of the most fun months of my whole career.
Wow.
Tell us how you got over to audio.
Once again, I'll give love to my guy Andy Frank. He had me step in on Live from Studio 5 a couple times. I ended up co-hosting on Wednesdays with Mike Ross, which was a ton of fun. And from that opportunity, it just so happens that Kelly, you were stepping away to go work on your show, and they needed someone to step into your shoes on a daily basis. AMI This Week was also going through a little bit of a transition. Anthony McLaughlin and Molly Burke were both having some vacation times and some other projects that were lining up. So they needed a live body in Toronto. And I just worked my way in and made a positive enough impression. I didn't offend enough people. And next thing you know, the ball just kept on rolling.
Oh man, I remember that talk before I went away, Dave, and just knowing this was going to be the launching of Brown all over audio and for what things would become, not long after. So Dave, interesting things started to happen when it came to Live from Studio 5 into Now with Dave Brown. I always used to ask people who were in the business, what is your preference, TV or radio? But today, both exist together. I mean, radio, you do radio stuff, you still film everything. So is that a silly question now, or to ask, or one of those in the past, because you're involved, of course, and have been in both? Is there a preference?
Of course, there's a great opportunity here to plug my brand new show, Game Changers, which you can find Thursdays at 9 p.m. Eastern time on AMI TV, and find the repeats at AMIplus.ca. Ever the consummate professional. Kelly, I will actually flip your question around a little bit on you, if you don't mind, because I think what really matters here in the context of this conversation is the notion of live. Because whether it's live radio or live TV, that is the highest of high bar in broadcasting. I'm not saying it's necessarily the highest art form. I'll give that to our documentary filmmakers and our docuseries makers out there in this world. But when you talk about doing something with no safety net and needing to depend on your instincts and your abilities and the people around you and teamwork, working in live broadcast is the pinnacle of broadcasting. And if you can do live, you can do anything. So even in my new role here with Game Changers, there are moments, Kelly, you remember this from filming out in the field with your time with AMI this week, you might only get 13 minutes to cram in a segment because of whatever went wrong, technology, guest timing, weather, you name it. And you've got to hit that live to tape. You rely on your decade plus work in live broadcast, and it's smooth as silk, as smooth as butter, my friends.
Yeah. And I love that you turned it around, because when I put that question together, I thought, really, it's the no safety net. It's the being up on the wall and all you can do is lean back for your guard to catch you if you're wall climbing or whatever. But you got to keep going. You've got to keep that forward motion. There's no, all right, retake. I remember doing stand-ups where we could retake. But like you just pointed out, Dave, when someone's saying, yeah, we'll stop our work for a few minutes to give you some quiet, but we got to move on this project. We can give you 15 minutes. We'll go for coffee. Then we got to resume. You're banging it off. So really wonderful with that, and really great point there, Niz.
Yeah, those stressful times, but I absolutely love the adrenaline, I have to say. Dave, let's be real here. Let's hear your best and worst memories. Go.
Well, I'll give you a bit of a generic best memory. And Nazreen, you were part of this in the Now with Dave Brown world, that every day we would do these segment 7s that were originally wraparounds that eventually became round tables. But segment 7, where either Daniel Penamondo or Sam Robinson or Eliza Rocco or Grace Schofield would come in with an entertainment report, and then we'd shoot the breeze on that for a little bit. You'd stop by with a what's trending. We'd get a good little chatter going there. Mike Ross would come in with this day in history, or Corinne Van Dusen would come in with this day in history. And then right at the tail end, Ramya would stop by to preview what was coming up on Kelly and Company or Kelly and Ramya. And I always knew if gas was being cooked with, if there was something that was going to connect with the audience, you would hear that giggle or that from Ramya. And Ramya was always my test case. So if you could get Rums moving, that's how you knew you were having a good day. But Nazreen, I'll tackle this with a little bit more of sincerity here. I think the best memory that I have is about the pipeline that AMI Audio and AMI TV live shows created for people with disabilities. There was no space in Canadian broadcast that was platforming that many voices of people with disabilities and then moving them forward in the pipeline. Nazreen, look at you. You're co-hosting the show today. It started in a much more modest way. It's wild. Think about someone like Ramya. I also think about people like Jenny Bovard, for example, who's now doing her show Pretty Blind for AMI TV. Kelly Braun Johnson being a contributor on Mind Your Own Business with Kevin Shaw. Some amazing journalism work for Canadian Affairs, these shows were pipelines for talent with disabilities to get their reps in and really, really find their voice. So there you go. That once again is a bit of a generic answer to your question, but I'm thinking about the legacy and the best memories. I'm living the best memories when I see people having success around me.
Yeah,
That's so beautiful.
I feel the same. I mean, even what we were just saying to Fern. Fern gets doing this show, starts switching career and moving along, and it's reflected here on the show. We've watched so many people make some decisions, and again, I love what they're able to do, where they're going, and that kind of thing. So I totally love that field, Dave. Thanks for bringing that forward, because it has been beautiful. We have been involved with so many people and had the privilege and the pleasure of watching different things happen to them and riding along with them. Dave, though, for a very special surprise for you today, if you're ready for one, Dave, you all set? You feel like this? We'll talk about a game changer for you here and talk about flipping the script. Back in the day, producer on Now with Dave Brown, Bruce McLaren is joining us for a couple of moments. Bruce, welcome to the show.
Hello.
Hello, Bruce. All right, let's Nizreen and I sit back, put Bruce to work, and David certainly to work
my
now.
Coffee.
Big Bruce, are you about to put me on the grill here? Can you tell it's summertime because Big Bruce is going to give me a grilling?
That's what I'm about to do. So I've planned a small quiz. The intention is to stump you here, and there's some media in some of these questions that will back me up. So anyway, it's I'm really excited about this. I'm thankful to Kelly and his room for bringing me along. This is great. So here we go. Here's the first one. We played a prank to our audience on April 1st, 2021. What was the premise of this prank?
Daniel Pinamondo opened the show and he claimed it was Now with Daniel Pinamondo.
That's it.
Good morning, everyone. I am Daniel Pinamondo. We're doing something new today. Dave Brown is out. I am in. This is Now with Daniel Pinamondo. Let's hit the hums and go!
I remember this.
So for the audience, everybody in the team whistled and recorded the song. And played
That's
along.
great. That's
That's
great.
what we did that time. So anyway, good times.
And great response, Dave. Man, geez. One.
Okay, so for the ones that are gonna have media, I'm gonna ask if we could cue them after Dave has answered, please. So this one does not have media, but it's a really interesting question nonetheless. All right. One hot summer morning in 2022, just like today, Rogers had a massive internet outage that affected around 12 million people and thousands of businesses. AMI was one of them. In the headquarters, we could not speak to anybody in the building, pardon me, outside of the building, in no particular way at all, like no telephone, no email, nothing. We didn't even know whether the show was going to go to air. But we thought we have to make it work. We planned all the topics, the script had been written, so we decided to go on. We just didn't know how we would proceed. Who did we call to be the guests for that day?
Bruce, I want to echo that. It was a miracle that the show went to air that day, and it was such a tribute to people like yourself, Paula Deneen, Leanne, Ray, all these folks who got that show to air. But the three voices who we brought in were all people who had to be in the building that day, and that was Sam Robinson in Master Control, it was Mike Ross just down the hall, and Andy Frank joined myself right in Studio 5.
That is correct. One bonus question on that one. Did that show see the light of day?
Oh, you know what? I don't even know if it did it?
It didn't.
No!
No, it didn't. Like we didn't know. We did not know. We made our best effort, and we didn't know. And we thought it would go on the rerun. It didn't even know nothing. So anyway.
Did the podcast go up? Did the podcast go up that day?
Yes, that was the only one they did. Yes.
Okay, good. Because, Bruce, because if you told me it didn't go up, I would have said, then we shouldn't have done any of that work. We should have just gone for breakfast that day.
We didn't know. right? And we were just so professional to do this.
You know
okay.
us, pure professionalism.
All the time. There's another media clip on this one, but again, I want to play it one after you try to guess what this is. So one day in 2024, I was subbing as senior producer because Enrica was on holiday, I think, and I decided for fun to prompt an AI music maker to create an intro for the show. What was the date and what was the genre of this song?
Oh, okay. The date, that's gonna stump me. But the genre was sort of was it like a hip hop, EDM, techno kind of thing?
Neither. Sorry. Let's play the music, please.
It's Friday, May 24th, 2024. Welcome to Now with Dave Brown. Coming to you on MITV. I'm Dave Brown. Hit the horns and go!
It was a boy band, and it was May 24, 2024. That was the...
Wow.
I loved it.
So is anybody counting? We're doing 2 questions out of 3, so that's not bad still, Dave.
Yeah, I'm 2 for 3. By the way, I would love to sort of ask DJ Nazi Naz over there. You know, I think Wiz Khalifa might call that a little hip hop soundy. I might deserve half a point there.
Does it really? I'll give you half a point. I'll give you half a point. Okay. No, but you're killing it with these answers. Honestly, your memory.
Yeah, he has some uncanny memory. He's weird. All right, let's do this one. When we made the switch to Zoom video calls from our good old trusty Skype system, why was the change of platform so important for the production of Now? Other than the fact that it was a different platform, like why was it so crucial?
So there's a number of reasons as to why it was so crucial, and forgive me if I don't quite hit this exactly on the head, but it allowed more voices to be joining conversations remotely. In the Skype world, there was a limit of 2 lines that could be piped in for a roundtable conversation, which oftentimes left you and our colleagues like Sebastian McKenzie scrambling around in the middle of segments trying to reconnect people and not necessarily having the opportunity to test people in advance. So Zoom allowed for more voices to come in and for a great TV technical producer like yourself to do pre-checks before somebody hit the air.
Yeah, got it. Nailed it. Bang. 3 out of 4. Perfect. Okay, there's another one. We talked a lot about technology on Now. Who were the tech contributors for Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday on the tech segments in early 2022?
Early 2022. Okay, I can totally run this. Mondays were Mark Aflalo. Tuesdays were Nelson Rego. Wednesdays were Mike Agerbo. Thursdays were the Double Tap guys. Eventually, there was a bit of a format flip where Mark started joining the show on Mondays and the Double Tap guys started doing Thursdays. Don't forget that Denny Boudreau was also a tech contributor along the way as well.
Yeah, I think we're missing one person there.
Sean's Marco Pasqua?
One really important one. He produced segments, tech segments for MITV.
Oh, Mike Agerbo. I thought I mentioned Mike Agerbo, but yeah, Wednesdays were Mike Agerbo right before Craig Oliver.
Bang on. Okay.
Right on. Man. Talk about knowing your show.
Kelly, I spent a lot of time studying the format clock. It also helped that I built the format clock.
Difficult question, though. I have to say, I'll give you a point.
Yeah, well, and the nightmares that he'd have too. Who was coming to get Dave in his sleep? You know, Mike Agerbo. What? Come on, get up. We got a show to do.
He could recite the roster from Monday to Friday. It was pretty crazy.
Yeah.
All right, this is a really fun one. After a long work week, the audio tech of the show decided to play One More Time by Daft Punk. We decided to start dancing along in our separate booths because it was COVID time, so everybody had to be separate. This didn't make it to air because this was after the show. What members of the crew were dancing?
This was maybe one of the happiest cores in the office during COVID times that I could ever remember. And there's probably a few short stories that we could share, but it was Sam Robinson in the audio booth. It was Seb McKenzie in the TV switcher booth. It was you in your booth. And it was myself in Live from Studio 5, all showing off our finest chair dancing moves.
Okay. I'm going to ask our tech, Mark Rankin, to please play the media I can narrate who's on the screen so we could find out whether it was that crew that you mentioned. Here we go. We're having a problem maybe. Now we have Dave. We have Sam in the background. Everybody dancing. Lights are going on and off as they're being faded up and down by the video producer in the booth. That is me from another suite dancing. And the video technical producer that day was Dan Belmont.
Oh, it was Dano!
Wow.
And that's really it.
That's
Tell
great.
me you posted that on social media because that is so funny.
We kind of just kept it for us. So
That's
we got
nice.
4 out
It
of
went in the
6.
group chat. It went in the group chat just like the day when they cleared out the old office space and the 5 of us rolled around in the office chairs playing bumper cars.
That was so cool. We were like,
So professional in the office.
We're not taking this
So
stuff with
professional.
us. We're moving one day, and let's it doesn't matter. We got about 4 more minutes. Let's see what we can get in.
okay, let's do a quick one. 2. Let's just do two. Okay, let's see. Other than the COVID shutdown, we reluctantly had to cancel a few shows. These shows were either canceled in progress or just about to start. Can you remember a few instances where any of the shows were canceled?
Bruce, can you remind me the exact date of your birthday? Is it January the 3rd is your birthday?
Yes.
January 3rd, 2024. Unfortunately, one of our colleagues had car trouble and did not have enough folks to run the show out of the control room. So we had to cancel that show that day. And I remember I was so, I'll say it, I was infuriated, and I was infuriated for about a week because I had worked on January 1st to make sure that the people on the 3rd were good to go so that the show could be properly produced on the 2nd. And I've never been so angry in my entire life that a show got canceled.
I went on my birthday and then it was like no show. It's like, really? Anyway, and one last one just before we're out of time. According to me, what was the best show of the week?
Oh, it could vary a little bit, but you used to love the energy of Thursdays.
Yes!
because there was a little bit of journalism, there was a little bit of technology. You'd oftentimes get someone like a Jenny Bovard in the mix on a Thursday, and of course, you would get either Mark Rankin or the Double Tap guys, which was always dope. And I'm trying to remember how most of our Thursdays wrapped, but they tended to be quite strong. So Thursdays were definitely the day that you enjoyed the most.
Wonderful. So I'm just going to wrap it up here so we don't go over time. So we had 6 out of 8. Well done, Dave Brown. Well, you knew your show. Well done.
My God. Dave, Bruce, first of all, guys, thanks for doing this. Thanks for surprising and Bruce put this together for us. We got the idea and said, hey, Bruce, do you mind doing something kind of neat? And the quiz came up. Dave, absolute fantastic memory, but mostly guys, as usual. You guys delivered it really well to us. And this is what we talked about. Dave said it earlier about that feel of the live show era. Thanks, guys.
Guys, it's such a pleasure. Bruce, thank you for everything you've done over the years. It was always such a pleasure working alongside you. Same goes for you, Nazreen and Kelly. You should be really proud as you approach what was almost a decade run doing live programming. Really top tier, dude.
Thanks, pal. Appreciate it.
It
Good
was a
luck with the
pleasure.
show. We really, I love what's going on there. And Dave, I think we've all been able to do what we've wanted to do, play radio, morph it into TV, and pick up skills that I'm sure you feel like I do. We would have never, ever thought of us doing, never imagined when we were in broadcast school.
Yeah, no doubt about that. Thursdays, 9 p.m. Eastern Time, Game Changers, AMIplus.ca if you miss them when they air.
Thank God now I don't have to do this as part of the extra. My good heavens, it's written right here. Dave, Bruce again. Thanks, guys. That was now with Dave Brown. Of course, Bruce McLaren also joining us too for a fun Kelly and Company little live send-off with the guys, as we've been doing that all month. Both of them, of course, are sticking around, as Dave mentioned, promoting Game Changers. Bruce is with us as a promo producer, and you can check out season 1 of Game Changers, hosted by Dave Brown, on AMI TV Plus, and watch it at your leisure or on Thursday nights, that's for sure. Nisreen, I got a bit of an item I just want to make sure that people know a little bit about, because there was a dedicated leadership done here of the WFDB president, Sajid Harte, and team over there, because history has been made to endorsement of the UN to declare Helen Keller's birthday of June 27th of International Day of Deafblindness. This is incredibly important. This is a real coup. On World Deafblind Day, this was passed last week unanimously at the UN. This is a historic global milestone for the deafblind community, affirming deafblind as a distinct disability with its own specific challenges, barriers, and supports needs for full inclusion in society. This recognition has also been made possible by the collective support of about 100 countries who have co-sponsored this initiative. It also lays the foundation for concrete actions. Happy World Deafblind Day celebrations, if you're involved in any, on Friday the 27th. So what a coup, Nisreen, and what this means in the way of funding and recognition by all these countries involved. It's so important.
Absolutely incredible. Absolutely incredible.
Yeah. All right, Nis, I'll let you pick up the ball. I think we're all set here. Boy, fast-moving show today.
We have spoken a lot about technologies and accessible environments during our chats with orientation and mobility specialist Mark Rankin. For our last one, let's focus on the individual and the fundamental traits that enable someone with vision loss to be a successful traveler. Mark, where does it begin?
I'll tell you what got me thinking about this was I recalled, before I worked as an orientation mobility specialist, I worked with people with brain injuries. And I remember it was the rehabilitation process was arduous, and it tended to sort of plateau. And I happened to work with somebody with vision loss and saw amazing progress made through the interventions that the vision professionals were working with that person. And I thought, wow, that might be an area where I could feel like I've accomplished something working in the rehab field. And I have continued to feel that way throughout my career. But I recall when I first started working with folks with vision loss, the techniques are fairly straightforward, right? I mean, the mobility techniques, learn to use a cane. There's a lot of work, more around, I would say, integrating the kind of the sensory information and maintaining orientation and getting to the point where you have the confidence to sort of react to changes in the environment. That part is a tough journey. It requires a lot of work, but it tends to be successful. And early on in my career, I would notice that what tended to hold people back would be more confidence around often social things. So I remember working with a lady, got her very, very independent. She could take transit, go pretty much anywhere in the city where she desired to go. And the more I sort of would check in with her, I'd say, well, did you go to that coffee shop? And she'd say, well, no. And I'd say, why? And she said, well, all I can think of when I get there is everybody's going to be looking for me, fumbling to find the door, because that's the hardest part for me. I have landmarks to get basically there, but that last little bit, and I know it's all glass front. People sit at the counter there. They're looking out there, and all I can think of is that. So, that was very much a case of her sort of still coming to grips with the idea of being visually impaired. Identifying, embracing that. as an identity for her. So she was still kind of mourning that.
And it's hard, Mark, because a lot of time you think people are going to stop you, bother you. The cane is more of a people zero in on you to ask questions, to demand to help you, to make themselves feel like, oh, there's somebody who needs my help. And I think, and I used to say this to people in theater when we'd learn plays and they were self-conscious. I'd say, what do you think? People pay to come and sit here and watch us make mistakes, watch you not quite know where you're going, because I was working with persons who were low vision or blind, or they're in your corner. I'd say they want to watch you put on a good show. People don't sit in the coffee shop waiting. Let's see if she runs into a wall and spills the coffee all over herself. Wait for it. But yet you feel that. And I know when I was a teenager, I had a wonderful mentor that would tell me, he'd call me up and say, so get on the bus and come down and visit me at work. Oh, I'm kind of watching something now. I'll see you when you get here. Remember, you're taking this bus, you cross this street when you get off it, walk this way, and then inside. And I'll tell you, it was helpful because he was a person who I knew I couldn't say to him, yeah, but what if people stare at me? Yeah, what if they do? They'll get tired of looking at you after a while.
Mm-hmm.
So actually, that's amazing that you mentioned that, because I was thinking, well, I'm going to be speaking to some people who are obviously successfully doing the, living with disability and thriving, right? So really kind of role model. And I was curious, like, where do you get this confidence from? So you mentioned a mentor, and I think that's something that we probably don't have enough of. Especially often I'll find mentors who, don't identify just on the basis of disability, but like maybe identify more deeply in terms of maybe more cultural aspects or can sort of bond in multiple ways, because people really are a lot more complicated than maybe the rehab model that kind of is one size fits all would indicate, right?
Yeah, you have those moments. I think that help push you along to where you say, what am I doing? Whether you feel in danger or not. I've always felt, Nazreen, that people who have enough vision to maybe not need a cane or get along better to some extent, but on the other hand, sometimes are most misunderstood because people don't see a cane to say, oh, they're blind.
Yeah.
And I know myself, when I hesitated to carry a cane, it came down to this big guy think he owns the sidewalk, or he's drunk or on something.
Yep. That has been done. You look at me and I don't use a cane, but I do have low vision. And so, as you said, when it's a clear door, it takes me a minute to find the handle or to push or pull. And you find people just like looking and staring and laughing at times. And it's hard to explain, okay, I really couldn't see, and you're trying to tell yourself, okay, you don't have to explain to these people what you're going through. But at the same time, they wouldn't know that I wouldn't be able to see because there's no visible disability there. And
what's scary is you're on something as opposed to a person with a vision challenge or some other challenge. It's, oh, this woman's got to be drunk or high. She can't even find
crossing the street as well. That's the same thing. You often, get into very close accidents because of those things, and you don't have anything to tell people, okay, like, you need to be careful around me, or I can't tell if there's like the walking sign is on. There's so many scenarios that it's still difficult to kind of explain to people that this is why. But should you?
Yeah,
I don't know.
And there's an expectation on the public, if they'll make a quick judgment, right? And absent something identifying you as somebody with vision loss, then they will expect you. Like I've seen cars, can complete a turn, saying, oh, well, that person's going to stop. Obviously, they'll see me and they'll stop crossing the street long enough to let me get through, right? I mean, outside of the fact that that's not the way traffic rules work and pedestrians have right of way, there are a lot of assumptions built into the way we interact with each other, in the absence
and we have to have our time and way to deal with, especially if you've got vision loss. A lot of people are resistant to the cane. A lot of women will tell you they feel harassed If the cane is almost like a, hi there, I'm blind. Oh, well, do you need any help? Get away from me. No, right? And I can understand that making a person fearful. I felt that way when people would come up, sir, your left shoe's untied. Of course, I knew that, but it wasn't an appropriate spot where I could put my foot up and tie it up. But I was aware. But they wanted to help me as if somehow being blind, I wouldn't have a clue. My shoe was untied. And I know sighted people sometimes don't either. But also, Mark, one of the things that I found the hardest in Toronto is having to try to communicate pointing to food if I was buying something, or if I didn't need help, or if I did need help, because we know Toronto's very multicultural, and people come from different walks of life where they may or may not recognize blindness in the same way or disability in the same way. I'm sure with the clients you've had, you've dealt with that, or other things that maybe we should touch on that have gotten in the way, even outside of maybe an intellectual challenge.
Yeah, mentioning the cane, though, and vulnerability, that's one that's increasingly the case we run into, where people feel that they may be victimized, and they'll be reluctant to use a cane in their local community. So they might try to keep the cane stored until they're maybe on the bus or a few blocks away. I've had one person who couldn't use a cane. She worked at a shelter and she didn't want to identify to the people. It was a men's shelter, and she didn't want to identify the people in the shelter that she had a vision disability, because again, she felt she may be put at risk. The initial scenario I said there about the person who felt self-conscious or not secure. I took some time off when my kids were young. I wasn't very involved in orientation mobility. I still did work with people with vision loss a little bit. But when I came back, one of the first people I worked with was somebody who was probably should have been a refugee claimant, but did not have status here because he came up. She was a police officer in Mexico, came up to avoid actually cartel violence, had some family members murdered.
Oh, wow.
But came up here not speaking any English, got a cash job working for a company where someone spoke Spanish, and kind of got him on board. Then lost his vision through diabetes, and I started working with him in a shelter, and he had no support, so he couldn't afford a cane. There was no ADP to pay for a cane, so he continually relying on sort of charity. I would try to get stuff for him, and I remember one day I was working with him and he was limping, and by this time he picked up a fair bit of English, so he could communicate fairly well, especially once you kind of knew his speech patterns. And he had told me that he was limping because he'd had a sore on his toe and he was worried that it was maybe gangrene. So he amputated his own toe with a steak knife.
Oh, man.
Horrific story. And that was a very different story than a lack of self-confidence. It spoke to a real lack of resources and just connection to the sort of social safety net. We think that, Canada is sort of universal and that it supports everyone. But there, that period, unfortunately, those situations became more common, where you see a lot of people falling through the cracks, and it's an impact of multiple things, of poverty. Sometimes it is, talk about intersectionality in terms of, you have a disability, you're a person of color, you're a newcomer, you don't culturally understand some of the things that might be available or how to access them. And there's not really enough case management. Like, I find there's a little bit of siloing in terms of the way social services work. And so to go in as a rehab specialist and think what you need is just someone to teach you how to use a cane and understand when to cross the street. Well, put that in the context of, do I have anywhere to go? When I get somewhere, do I have money to purchase things I need? There's so many complicating factors that we run into, particularly now, that makes you think that sometimes you can feel very overwhelmed. So it's nice to kind of hear you think of, like you mentioned, mentors, I think is a really important one. I think a lot of people feel very isolated anyway with vision loss. So if you can have someone in their community who can act as a role model, somebody who they can identify with, again, on more than just their disability, I think that's really a key one.
Yeah.
I actually hadn't really thought through that. It seems so obvious now that you mentioned it. But it's always been something that, What's that?
Because it's helpful. You get that firsthand experience, and Mark, as you know, as we've talked about over the years you've been with us on the show, you get someone who you feel you relate to. We have to call a halt there, Mark, and we want to thank you, of course, for everything you've done with us for the show.
Always been a pleasure. Kind of bittersweet to say goodbye, but looking forward to see what's next for you all. And very, very much enjoyed all our chats over the years.
Appreciate that. This was our wrap up with orientation and mobility specialist Mark Rankin, who's been joining us for monthly O&M chats for several years. These rehab focused chats have been confidence building, and we've had so many questions and rant sessions that Mark has indulged. It's been wonderful to have a professional in the field joining us regularly on the show. Thanks, Mark Rankin.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
It's interesting when we talk on our show, Nisreen, because we have so many situations where Mark, there were subjects that they would get us talking, and those roundtables would come out whether we wanted to or not, of our own experience. And you just hope that in all the time of us kind of, for moments, making it about ourselves a little bit, help somebody else, such as that mentor we were talking about. So Nisreen and I will be back with you on the program tomorrow for the Tuesday edition. Again, a big thank you to our contributors that we continue to file through and wave bye to. And you, of course, out there. Any comments you have for us, 1-866-509-4545. On the next show, after years of talking independent living with Leanne Barda, she's here with a Ask a Rehab Specialist. It's kind of a wrap-up that we've got. Let's call it the FAQ of ILS. Plus, Amanda Chicartier joins us to send us off into the summer with a playlist of songs for the summer. Something you'll enjoy. Well, I hope you'll enjoy the next edition of Kelly & Company. We're waving at you.
Thanks for tuning in to Kelly & Company. Follow us on all social media, and don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel for more.